Wisp Sports Radio, the voice of women in sport.
This is Season 3, Episode 6 of The Horse Show on Wisp Sports Radio, brought to you by Highlands Earache Drops.
Have you been diagnosed with an earache by a physician? For natural relief due to earache pain, fever, irritability, and sleeplessness, try Highlands Homeopathic Earache Drops and Tablets. Highlands has been trusted for generations to provide safe, effective homeopathic medicines for all members of the family. There's no alcohol and no sting. You can get back to doing what you love. Go to highlands.com/ear-pain to find a retailer near you. That's highlands.com/ear-pain. Claims are based on traditional homeopathic practice, not accepted medical evidence. Not FDA evaluated. Read and follow label directions.
I'm Chris Stafford, and at Wisp Sports, we believe that women in sport deserve equal coverage. The Horse Show features exclusive interviews with riders and trainers around the world. Hello, and thank you for joining me on what is the longest running show on Wisp Sports Radio. My guest today is Connecticut native Adrienne Sternlicht, who has watched her US rankings climb to number 6 and elevate her to the shortlist for the FEI World Equestrian Games, which takes place in Tryon, North Carolina, in September. Adrienne has been training with another US team member, McLain Ward, for the past 2 years, and she now has her once-in-a-lifetime partner in the 10-year-old mare Cristalline, a ride that she acquired from Australian Chris Chugg 2 years ago. Together, they've notched up a career highlight by winning a 1m50 class at the Knokke CSI 5-star earlier this month. Adrienne is currently campaigning her 3 top horses in Europe this summer, the other 2 being Toulago and Fantast, who are also on great form and raising Adrienne's profile as she prepares for the final USEF Observation Trial in Dublin before heading back to the States. Still riding as an amateur, Adrienne graduated from Brown University, and she shares with us how she has other goals outside of the show jumping arena. We also hear how she prepares mentally and physically for the big competitions. I caught up with her at her base in Belgium before she heads to the Longines CSI Ascona next week. Adrienne, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
Well, first of all, big congratulations getting named to the US team. They're shortlisted for the World Equestrian Games. When you realized that news, when you were actually officially named, how did that feel? What was your reaction?
I think I had great anticipation leading up to it. I knew that if I performed well this winter at the Winter Equestrian Festival with an animal like I have, of the caliber and quality of my horse Cristalline, I knew I would have a chance to be named to the 10. And I trained with McLain Ward, and he not only has, physically helped me prepare for the game in terms of honing my riding skills, but also mentally preparing, not just for being named to the team, but, how to mentally prepare as a contender.
As you say, much anticipation, but then you're finally named. Was it a bit of a relief, or did you feel, oh my gosh, now the pressure is really on?
I think it's a bit my personality. I'm a bit of a workhorse. I'm sort of always looking for the next thing. So I sort of felt, I was happy that I was named. I think maybe the people around me and my friends and family were happier that I was named. And for me, it was just, okay, now the real work begins.
Yeah, it certainly does, doesn't it? And there you are in Europe having a wonderful time. Got 3 horses over there. We'll talk about them and what your plans are going forward now that you have been named. But let's just rewind a little bit, Adrienne, for those who are not familiar with you coming up through the sport, because you started with ponies, but how did that first connection happen for you? When did you realize you actually wanted to ride ponies when you were a child?
My family is not involved in horses whatsoever. Neither of my parents grew up around them, nor do either of my siblings. I have 2 brothers. have absolutely zero interest in riding. My best friend growing up is Amanda Schulman, and her younger sister, her family was always involved in horses. Her mom rode quite seriously, Jill Schulman, as a teenager and young adult. And so they had a horse in their backyard, a massive, I think he must have been 18 hands, horse named Samson. And it was one of those sort of telling stories of I went to her house for a play date, got on his back, and didn't really want to get off when I got, my mom came to pick me up. So the rest is a bit of history.
Yeah, certainly. But when you say get on his back, if he was 18 hands and you were how old?
Yeah, I was 6 years old, so I was very much hoisted onto his back. And I begged for lessons, and my parents resisted for quite some time.
What was it that convinced them that this was something you wanted to take seriously?
I think this is a personality trait that has carried on throughout my life. I'm quite stubborn and determined. When I want to do something, I try to get it done. And so I think through some begging and pleading, there was a barn not so far from my house. I grew up in backcountry Connecticut, and there was a local barn, and I was able to go there for lessons a little bit. And so at first it was, once a week, and then things carried on quickly from there.
But when did you decide, that it was going to be show jumping? And you could have gone eventing or dressage, you could have done anything, of course, at that stage when you were horse mad, like so many of little girls are. I was one of them. There were so many choices. What made it that you, what was it about show jumping that convinced you that's where you wanted to go?
I have to say, I think it was honestly a lack of exposure to other parts of the sport. I really didn't know anything about dressage. And I've always been a bit of an adrenaline junkie. I didn't know anything about eventing. At one point, I had a coach who was when I was first starting out, named Ida Young, who was an amazing dressage rider. But I think I've always lived a bit for the thrill, so I think show jumping always had my name written on it.
Well, obviously it's working for you, but you did have a choice of other sports, and you did enjoy other sports, as I understand it. Of course, being in Connecticut, you had access to some skiing not too far away, I'm sure. Now, what was it about those sports? And I know you did squash too, didn't you? So you were indoors, outdoors, individual sports. Yeah. What was it about those two? Because squash is not really much of an adrenaline junkie sport, is it? But skiing could be.
Yeah, absolutely. Skiing is quite a thrill, I would say. And my dad always pushed skiing on me because I think even more so than riding, I had a natural talent for it. So I skied competitively a bit. And then I broke my leg twice skiing. The first time I was just in a practice race, and I was flying. And the second time I was because of poor weather conditions. So, those two injuries kind of deterred me a bit. I still love to ski, but especially now I'm a bit more cautious because I don't want to do anything to jeopardize my show jumping career. And squash was something that just sort of came naturally. It was big in the area that I grew up in. And it's a very fast-paced sport, and I love anything that pushes me. It's my nature to sort of want, things to move quicker and faster and, to be pushed harder. So I think I really enjoy the game, and I'm quite competitive as an individual. I don't really like to rely on other people. So that seems to be a thread throughout my sporting careers.
But of course you have to rely on another athlete now that you've chosen horses as your sport. So you've got that to rely on, but it's a very different dependency too, isn't it? It's the shared confidence and the trust and everything else. And then your journey just went straight into show jumping pretty much then, didn't it, once you decided that's what you wanted to do? And you had some very good trainers, Adrienne. You really have, mixed with some really, really inspirational trainers and been influenced by them over the way. How did you select Adrienne Sternlicht, of course, and Laura Kraut and Nick Skelton? How did you choose your trainers along the way?
Actually, so I went to boarding school. It's related, I promise. I went to boarding school, and that's where I also played squash. I played squash on the team there. And then when I moved to boarding school, I changed trainers from Heritage Farm to Linda Langmeyer at Kellyanna Farm, just because out of local convenience. And then she and I ended up becoming very close and working together we worked together for over 10 years. And so it was I was about 18 when I started riding in a very competitive way. Before that, I was just showing a bit on the weekends when it didn't interfere with my schedule. And then about a year into me riding seriously, Linda knew that I wanted to try to, and by seriously, I mean dedicating my time sort of wholeheartedly to it when I was at university. I went to Brown University. And sort of making riding the focal point of my life. And so Linda Langmeyer knew that I wanted to, sort of have the door open for me. And at that point, she didn't feel like she had the contacts. And so it was somewhat of I don't know exactly how, but it became somewhat of a natural progression to, we asked Laura Kraut to help me. She was training a lot of other, top young riders like Jessica Springsteen and Paris Helen and Elise Oken, three of whom are my best friends now. So, it was a nice transition for me.
Well, it certainly worked for you, and you've now been with McLain Ward, 2 years now, is it? You've been training with him?
Yes, just about 2 years.
Yeah, and that's really working for you, but you've always had the horsepower. We all know that a rider is only as good as the horse underneath them. Let's talk about the partnerships that you had. You got the mare, as you mentioned before, Cristalline. You got her, I think you stole her from the Australian team, didn't you, from Chris Chugg?
Yes, I did a bit. Luckily, I'm quite close with Gabrielle Kuna and Chris Chugg, who bought the horse as I believe a 5-year-old from the Prime Selection Sales auction, and then produced her until she was 8 in Australia. So yeah, she's definitely the superstar of my group in all aspects. The most incredible animal that I've ever been around. Just to work with her. Yeah.
Just unpack that a bit for me. I was just thinking, she's a mare, you ride geldings as well. What is it about her? What's her personality? What makes her the athlete that she is? Because clearly she is a star.
I think it's her mind is sort of her most formidable quality. She has every single sort of, pointed attribute that you look for in a top show jumping horse. She is very athletic. She is very intelligent. She has good blood. She's, and she just has such an awareness of her body and how she moves. And she's always working on my team. I know that, she wants to do her best for me. And we're very close. I spend a lot of time with her, and I feel like we really understand each other and kind of play off each other's, strengths and hopefully, support each other in our weaknesses. So, it's a very special partnership for me.
What's she like in the barn? Is she marish?
Not at all. She's a bit marish, only really about her food. We have tried to turn her out before with a pony. She lived outside in Australia, and she's not happy to have someone in her personal space when she's eating. But besides that, she's the most even keel mare I've ever been around. Comes out the same every day. And, she's lovely to be around. She's very, very kind.
Is she easy to warm up and compete, or does she even-tempered? Does she cope with the stress and travel and all of that?
Yeah, I think she senses my energy. So I think when in Rotterdam, I was watching my videos and comparing the Nations Cup in Rotterdam, which was our last U.S. observation event that we jumped maybe 3 weeks ago, to the following week we jumped the 5-star in Knokke. And, I had a lot of adrenaline. I was, had very probably a bit of anxious energy because it was, the first team event that I felt real pressure at to perform, because I really want so desperately to, fulfill a lifelong dream of mine of competing at the World Equestrian Games. And so she was much more on the muscle there. And so I find my groom, Emma Chapman, and Sean Cassane, they were very close, and they joke with me that she needs a lunch before she shows, and so do I. So, we both have our pre-show routines that work for us, and they're quite similar, funny enough.
So what do you do before a competition then, just to prepare for that pressure?
Yeah, I think my pre-show ritual has evolved very much in the past 6 or so months. Starting last fall, I began working with a sports psychologist. I am quite a analytical rider, and for me, the sport is more about my mind than anything else, and the head place that I am in. So I sort of developed a routine, especially with her for the big classes. I always go for a run before I ride, before a big competition, and I always meditate before I get on. Those are sort of the two sort of center points that I try to organize the rest of my day around, when I know that I'm competing in a big class with her.
And that helps you just to get into the moment then, in a good state of mind and ready and I'm sure very focused by doing that, having that physical exercise and giving yourself time mentally to prepare.
Yeah, I think for me the mental preparation is sort of the greatest aspect, especially when you have our success. Having a horse like her who has all the quality in the world, and I have so much confidence in her. It's really about controlling me and making sure that I'm in my body more so than in my mind, if that makes sense. And that's when I ride best. It's sort of when I'm focused on everything that's happening between me and the horse. And so when you were talking about, relying on another partner, in this sport, and I said I like team, individual competition. For me, I'm just with her. I just feel like I'm one with her. Even I know that sounds a bit cheesy, but there's not so much of a differentiation between me and her when we're competing together. I see us as one.
The synergy is there clearly. Well, you got a first place ribbon there in Knokke, as you said, recently, last month, wasn't it? You were there. So on good form at the moment. And let's talk about the other horses. You've got Toulago with you.
Yes, I have Toulago with me. He's sort of been my steady Eddie, and he was a horse who was campaigned by 2 Olympic riders before me, both 2 male riders, Pia Schwitzer and Daniel Deusser, far better riders than me at the moment, I would say, or, more accomplished riders and seasoned at this level. But we have a very nice rapport. I can always count on him, and he was the first horse that I've competed with that was already sort of seasoned at the 160 level before I bought him, and so he's given me great confidence, and we try to set him up correctly for each class that he jumps. He's not a horse who performs his best if you show him week in, week out, so we try to be very targeted and aim for, certain classes every week when we compete in. I have a horse named Fantast. He's a very recent purchase. Actually, Rotterdam was my first international show with him, and we won the first class that we jumped there together. So it's an exciting partnership for me. I'm still getting to know him, and I'm jumping him right now 145, 150 meters, and he's a very useful horse for me to have in my group of horses because he can jump up and down the levels, and he's the first horse that I've had that is very sort of designated a speed horse. And I definitely think that just, working with him, it has and will continue to improve my jump off rounds. So, he's an exciting horse for me to have in my group of horses.
And have the speed that you clearly need as the adrenaline junkie you said you are. So I'm sure
Exactly.
He's the asset in the team. And so you've got the 3 rides over there. Let's talk about what's to come then, because you've done Rotterdam, you've done Knokke. What's next then in the lead up to WEG? Then you've got the final observation in Dublin coming up very shortly. Talk about the shows you have to do and when you'll be coming back, and what the rest of the lead up looks like going to WEG and to Tryon, Adrienne.
So my plan is I take Cristalline and Fantast next week to Ascona. It's a 5-star competition in Switzerland, and then following that I have 2 weeks off, and then before Dublin. And there I will take all 3 of the horses that I have in Europe. And I think the kind of key performance indicator for me will be the Nations Cup, which is on actually on the Friday at the Dublin Horse Show. So I believe that's August 10th. And so I think after then I'll sort of have an idea of what my schedule looks like, if we're headed for Tryon. And myself and my horses will come home immediately following, so we should all be home around August 14th, I would guess. And then my mares will have my mare, singular, will have a 60-day, her quarantine, which is, about 20 days. And then, so the horses will quarantine because we're just over the 60-day mark of being here. So I don't know, we're taking it one step at a time. McLain tries not to, while keeping me comfortable with the idea of not just, getting to WEG, but, competing at my best when I get there. We try to take one thing. It's a balance, I think, of, mental preparation and also taking things one step at a time. So, I've been here off for 2 weeks. Just riding and training a bit, and McLain has been away. He went home and jumped in Lake Placid, so he comes back in a few days before Aachen.
And what other horses do you ride apart from your own then in a typical day then when you're not showing?
Right now, I'm stabled here at Francois Matisse. He is based just outside of Liège in Belgium. So, for instance, last week my horses had a few days off following our 2 weeks of competition. So I went and rode at a friend's farm and just tried to help her ride. So I try to help out. Francois has a team of riders. But I'm here kind of riding and, working with my horses and my team every day. And we try to keep ourselves a little bit busy because normally at home I ride all the horses. I don't have anyone else who rides. So, normally at home I'd be riding, 6, 7 horses a day, and here I have half that amount. So it's a little bit low key in between shows, I have to say.
Yeah, sure, and that's what often happens, isn't it? Especially when you get closer to the championships. You hear riders just have one horse at a championship and they're just kicking their heels, wondering what else to do with their time. When you only focus on one horse. But talk about the horses that you have and the ownership of those horses.
I own them. So I haven't gone professional yet. There just hasn't really been a need for it. But obviously that's something I'd be interested in doing in time. But my horses are owned by my family, so I'm super fortunate to have, my parents be so supportive of my riding.
Yes, you're very, very lucky that, obviously you can do this as an amateur at this level. And you mentioned you had 2 brothers, but you told me earlier that they were not so sporty as you. You're the athlete in the family. Were your parents not at all athletic? They're not interested in sports?
No, my dad is quite athletic. He played tennis in college. So I think he lives a bit vicariously through me and, my passion for sport, that we compete in different sports. I think sort of the thrill of getting to a sport at the highest level, and, finding success at that level, I think is something that, is super motivating for him as well as a sponsor, and just to know how dedicated I am to it. And sort of to see the fruits of, my labor is almost, almost equivalent as him, having that experience himself.
Are they very keen to come to the competitions and support you?
My mom comes more often than my dad, but he's always watching when he's not here. My father came to Rotterdam, so it's very nice to have him there. And then my mom will come to Dublin.
Oh, terrific. Well, great. You've got the family involved there.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm looking at your rankings for this year. It's pretty impressive. Ranked number 6 in the USEF show jumping ranking list.
Thank you.
Yeah, congratulations on that, because obviously when you're young, this is an ambition, as you say, to ride on the team. Not only have you ridden on the team a few times now, to actually make it to a championship team like the World Equestrian Games. When you look at your career and the highlights so far, what would you single out as being most important milestones in your career?
That's a good question. I always try to sort of ascertain. There's not one event. Last year I jumped double clear on it was my second Nations Cup team in Langley in British Columbia. So that was definitely a milestone for me. As well, I think I've been having a bit of forefaultitis in the 5-star Grand Prix that I jumped, and I had my first double clear in a 5-star Grand Prix in April, which was also an exciting moment for me at the New York Masters, just to be competing against riders of that caliber. Obviously, we have lots of great riders in the States, but, the Longines Masters of New York drew a real international crowd. And I think Knokke, honestly, was my best show to date as a rider. Having double clear results in a 5-star competition with more than one horse was definitely confidence building before a big championship.
I'm sure. And when I look at the trainers that you've had, I'm curious. When you were growing up and you really got interested in the sport, Adrienne, who would you say were your heroes, apart from the people that you've ridden with? Who was it that inspired you the most as a young girl, getting into the sport?
I think, obviously, I ride with him, but McLain was always a bit of a hometown hero to me, McLain Ward, who I train with now. Because I grew up, riding around, being around him and having exposure to him without really knowing him. So I was always a bit awestruck when I was around him. And honestly, when I look back, because I was really not in the trenches of the top sport when some of my friends were doing it. Reed Kessler is one of my closest friends. And so I think, as a high school, when I was in high school, I was jumping meter 20, and Reed was going to the Olympics. I think definitely riders my age, I've always aspired, watching Lucy Davis's career and some of my other friends who have not only performed, at the highest level, but also competed at the championship level successfully for our country. I think that's the dream, and that's sort of the most, inspirational.
Well, you're obviously checking off things that probably on your bucket list already, Adrienne. One, obviously making it to a World Equestrian Games. All fingers crossed, of course, at this point.
Thank you.
When you look at how your career has evolved, what would you say you most value from being involved with sport?
I think absolutely, the sort of mental tenacity that I think began to develop and hone over the past. Honestly, it's been a major transition for me over the past 6 years over the past 6 months. Obviously, I've been competing at this level for a while, but just sort of an appreciation also of the, mental equilibrium that's necessary to compete at this level, staying calm and not having major fluctuations, and the way I respond to good results and bad results alike. I think that's sort of been the sort of mental fortitude that I will continue to hone, and I think I've begun to develop, regardless of how things go. I've sort of been, the greatest asset, that I've sort of developed, in my riding.
So when things do go wrong and you don't get the result that you were hoping for, you thought you were on form, you thought, you had a crack at a ribbon going into a class. When things really do go wrong, do you find now with maturity and with that mental preparation that you're really coping with that better, or do you go away back to the barn and just want to be on your own?
I would say it's my nature to want some alone time after it, but I now try to operate from a stance of I never really have felt sorry for myself. It's not really my way. It's more my way to beat myself up when I don't do it right. But I realize, the sort of lack of productivity of, self-deprivation in, whatever capacity, or, getting very upset with yourself. And, we don't have time for that. We have work to do. And I really am committed to being the best that I can be. And dwelling on the past doesn't really, have a place in that. So I would say that's sort of the change.
Well, having come from a childhood where you were one of those horse-mad girls, what would you say to young girls and women that are wanting to aspire to make it to a team, want to be the rider that you've become? What would you say to them? What advice would you give them?
I would say to stick with it. It's all worth it in the end, even if those moments that are trying, whether that's in terms of you feel like you're in a hole in your riding, or you're struggling mentally with the sport, or you don't have a horse at the time. I would say that it's a game of patience. And McLain once said to me that careers in this sport are made out of decades, not from years, because it's a sort of a lifestyle sport, and something that you can have so much longevity in the sport. So I would say try to have somewhat of a macro perspective and not focus so much on, or not dwell on the little moments.
Good advice. And I mentioned your bucket list, of course. You're checking it off by being selected to a short list of a World Equestrian Games. What else is on your bucket list, Adrienne?
I actually was a public policy major, and I've done a bit of social justice work along the way. And so I plan at some point perhaps to go to law school. I work a bit with the Robin Hood Foundation, which is a social justice-oriented nonprofit in New York City. And most recently, I've begun working on a campaign for a man who is, his name is Andrew Yang, and he's running for the Democratic nomination in 2020. So as much as the sport gives to me, and how fortunate I am to do it at this level, I certainly want to give back. So definitely doing some sort of social impact work, on a broader scale is part of my bucket list.
Oh, that's wonderful. And in the sport, do you still have big goals? Or if you're going to go to law school, do you think at some point you're going to have to, slow down on the riding to make time for that? How will you juggle those two careers?
Yeah, my parents always said that I could ride for 2 years out of school, and we've sort of delayed that. It's been about 2 years since I graduated in 2016 with WEG in mind. And I don't really see myself slowing up at it anytime soon, especially having, I would say the horse of a lifetime right now. But we have all sort of agreed that after Tryon we'll sit down and sort of look at things and figure out, the best plan moving forward. So I don't know exactly what it looks like, but I've honestly stopped worrying about it. And I have a bit of tunnel vision right now. I'm sort of, singularly focused on WEG. So.
Absolutely. Well, you certainly have to be. There's lots more to come after that, I'm sure, Adrienne. So the very, very best of luck. I hope it all goes according to plan for you and you stay single-minded, and we will hopefully see you in Tryon in September. And, thank you for taking the time to come on the program. I really appreciate it. Good luck in Europe on the rest of the tour, too.
Yes, thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Conversations from the world of women's sports. This is Wisp Sports Radio.
And I'll be bringing daily coverage from this year's World Equestrian Games in Tryon, North Carolina. That's beginning on September the 11th through to September the 23rd. If you follow international equestrian sport, then you'll know there are 7 disciplines. 3 of those are the Olympic disciplines: dressage, show jumping and eventing, plus carriage driving, reining, endurance and vaulting. They all take place together at the World Equestrian Games every 4 years. So if you're going to be there, do let us know. We'd love to catch up with you there and maybe have you come on the show. As always, you can email us here at info@wisports.com. And please do follow us on social media at WISPorts. We're on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. And there'll be links accompanying this episode on our show notes at wisports.com, including links to Adrienne's social media. My thanks again to Adrienne and to our sponsors, Highlands Earache Drops. Please visit them at highlands.com/ear-pain. Until the next time, thank you for listening and supporting women in sport everywhere.